coming on this beautiful day. I was at a program yesterday, and people said, thank you for coming in spite of the rain, and I feel like saying, thank you so much for coming in spite of the sunshine. Simple as that. From Victorian construction of its earliest buildings through the Brutalist approach in the 60s and 70s, the UMass campus architecture embodies many changes of style. A recent building boom has once again transformed the look and feel of the campus. This talk will focus on the architecture of the new buildings of UMass Amherst, which have been built in the last 2 decades. Our speaker is Steve Schreiber, a fellow of the American Institute of Architects. He's an architect and chair of the Department of Architecture at UMass Amherst, a former member and chair of the Planning Board, a former member of the Town Council, and a member and former chair of the UMass Campus Planning Committee. He brings a great deal of expertise to this presentation today. So I'll turn it over to Steve with many thanks, and thank you for being here again.
And thank you again for inviting me. And some of the things you said are true. I'm not so sure about the expert part, but I am able to, like many architects and professors I knew, we can talk about many things off the cuff. So again, your group is very important to me, and I love doing, giving these kinds of talks. I want to give a special shout out to George Knott, who I mentioned last time. So these are some of the things I do. I've added, if you were here last time, I've added one, which is the UMass Physical Planning Council, which I'm still a member of, but I was a chair of it for many years. So really what I'm going to speak about are buildings that have been constructed since I've been at UMass, and they not all of them. One of them is maybe I had a role in its existence, but the other ones I had a role in as a member of the campus planning committee, or as, in some cases, member of the building committee. So this is what you just read. So this is what I promised that I would speak about. So I'm really going to talk about the last 20 years. So that's since 2005. So this would be a good time to mention that, well, I'm going to mention a couple things. So one is, this is a terrific book about Amherst, the town of Amherst, A Guide to Its Architecture. It was written by Paul Norton, published in 1975. So when I came in 2005, 30 years after this book published, there's a whole section on UMass. And that was it, right? So not much had been built at UMass between 1975 and 2005. After 2005, there were a number of things that happened. The crash of 2008, where rates went pretty close to zero. The fact that the UMass system was really under-bonded, in other words, that they have the capacity to borrow, and they were way under that capacity to borrow. Related to the crash of 2008, the stimulus money that was directed to many different, state, local governments, federal agencies, some of that came to UMass. So really after 2008, there was another building boom. So you can look at the UMass campus almost like you look at the rings of a tree, starting at the South College, which I'll show a slide of, and the Old Chapel, which I'll show a slide of. You can see there's a growth period, there's a minor growth periods, and then a major growth period, and then it stops. It's like a flood, a drought, a flood, a drought. So if you look back from that period of 2008 to the present, there's another flood. If you were here 2 weeks ago, this is just, I want to see if you remember this. I'm not going to show you all of the concepts. I'm just going to show you this one. But this is a really important way of looking at things larger than buildings. So basically, a community, and campuses are communities within a community. So they're like little cities themselves. And I like to say that Amherst has 2 zip codes. Each has their own master plan. 01002, that's the town of Amherst, except for UMass. And there's 01003, that's UMass Amherst, except for Amherst. So each of those 2 are actually very similar sized entities that operate side by side, and there's a lot of overlap. But monumentals versus fabric buildings, that concept that I described last week is that a community like UMass, I'm sorry, a community like Amherst is most recognizable, enjoyable, cohesive if there's generally agreed on principles that certain buildings or background buildings are meant to be part of the fabric, and then other buildings are meant to be special, like a town hall, a library. Even in some cases, banks take that kind of role, schools, things like that. And then your ordinary commercial buildings, residential buildings, office buildings that they really are serving as fabric buildings. And then it could be called monuments versus background or generals versus soldiers. So this was a diagram I showed last time. The monumental buildings at the top meet the ordinary buildings in the middle equals a legible, beautiful city. So one of the things to talk about is the Morrill Land Grant Act of 1862. So many of you are probably familiar with that. So UMass Amherst exists because of this. So this was during the Civil War, and the federal government, Abe Lincoln president, basically donated land in the West to states for the purpose of starting colleges and universities that had certain missions to them, agricultural and mechanical. The last bullet, of course, is important to recognize that the land had other owners. So land where UMass is had other owners that were here before, or other people that occupied it at least, as did the land that was given away. If you're interested in this subject, the last bullet, there's a whole web page where you can identify your land grant university, whatever it is, and where that land came from and who the previous occupier. So UMass has a land grant acknowledgement, and they acknowledge both the land on which the university sits, but also the land on which they sold basically to create UMass. Trivia, there's 2 land grant universities in Massachusetts. What's the other one?
MIT.
More trivia. Justin Morrill was a senator from Vermont. He was also an architect. So he's a self-trained architect. It's worth going to the Morrill House, which is generally near White River Junction, that part of Vermont.
Yeah.
There's I think there's a sign on the I-91 that says Morrill Homestead. That's his own house that he designed. He also designed one of the facades of the U.S. Capitol, and I always get my east and my west mixed up, but anyway, that was also a project he took on, I believe, I hope, after he was in Congress. So this is just another little bit of fun facts. So a lot of the land grant universities that were started often started near pre-existing colleges. So I'm actually a Dartmouth College alum, and I didn't know this until recently, but the University of New Hampshire's land grant college was actually formed on top of Dartmouth. So they basically coexisted for some period of time. And so a lot of the buildings that I remember as being these beautiful 1880s buildings were actually at the University of New Hampshire. And then UNH decided to move its entire campus to Durham, New Hampshire. Anyone know what this is? This is the original MIT. So the MIT was originally founded in Back Bay, and then it was moved across the river to Cambridge, just down the street from Harvard. But it also was located next to a pre-existing, university that by that time I think was close to 200 years old. And then high above Cayuga's waters, Cornell. So Cornell actually still epitomizes the overlapping and the overlaying of land grant universities and private colleges. And actually the New York system has a number of these examples. The SUNY ESF, Environmental Science and Forestry, is really co-located with Syracuse University, a private university. So back in the 1860s through 80s, that was a conscious decision that these colleges could be together for the sharing of resources I don't know if there were the students moving back and forth or not, but that was, very much in mind. So now I bring you back to good old Amherst, and UMass was, it's interesting to read, actually Max Page and Marla Miller's book has a history of why Amherst was chosen as a location for what is now UMass Amherst. And there are a lot of competing, like I think Springfield, I don't remember all the competitors. It was like when the casinos were trying to find a spot, very similar kind of a jockeying, but the fact that Amherst College was already here was very much part of the decision making. And I'm gonna just pause here for a second and get ahead of myself, but this is South College, which is one of the original buildings at Mass Aggie, now UMass Amherst. Very much recently renovated, and actually I don't have this in my slides, but renovated with the building that's behind it. I think UMass has done a great job of taking the legacy buildings, putting additions on them, and then improving both. So that actually has been a mindful strategy of UMass, is whenever there's a building project, try to pair that with what they call a buddy building. So you can provide accessibility and new mechanicals and things like that in the new building, and then tie that back to the old building. So I'm in the College of Humanities and Fine Arts, my department, and this is our home, although I'm gonna show you our real home in a second. So that pairing of the legacy universities and the land-grant universities is actually kind of, I find that to be a really interesting comparison when you're looking at architecture. And Harvard MIT is just the absolute perfect pairing, because Harvard has always been, Harvard is Harvard, and Harvard is very liberal on some things, historically very conservative with architecture, so really had a history of building brick buildings, even 16-something into the 21st century, let's do that. Buildings that really looked historical, looked like they fit in. Just down the street, the land-grant university, now on a new campus, no context, right? So it's a brand new university, doesn't have to relate to a particular context or a particular image of it, because everything's new. These universities are being created in times of great technological change, and that is part of their mission, to advance technology, our knowledge of technology, our knowledge of the sciences, etc. So MIT has always, in its history, been an example of cutting-edge architecture. Harvard, examples of how you do historical architecture, even if it's a brand new building. MIT, futuristic architecture for pretty much everything. So on your right is Kresge Auditorium by the Saarinen firm, and by no coincidence, I'm showing you Amherst versus UMass. So there's something striking when you go wander around the main quad at Amherst College, and they have to, on the dorms, they said, built in 2004. So it could have been built in 1824. So they're really trying to recreate a look and feel of Amherst that is a legacy. Down the street at UMass Amherst, South College and the experiment stations, old brick Victorian buildings, but then they really took this brash, futuristic view to it. This is the Fine Arts Center. You all know that, probably if you've lived here more than a couple of weeks. Designed by not coincidentally, designed by the successor firm to Aaron Saarinen, Kevin Roach. Aaron Saarinen died way too young. Kevin Roach was his right-hand man, took over the firm, and was equally brash in his architecture. So I go back to this slide and back to this concept of generals and soldiers. So the generals generally have similar or the same uniforms or different heights or different widths, but generally they create a fabric. The general is up on a horse, wears a different uniform, much more visible. So that's a way of creating community. And this is Muscle Beach. So Muscle Beach is an architectural analogy for when every building wants to be the Fine Arts Center. The Fine Arts Center is very much this, or the Kresge Auditorium is this. So if you have Muscle Beach, I guess that's a kind of a fabric, but in a way it gets to be kind of a tiring fabric. So going back to again 2005, UMass had done this building boom through the 70s and then really stopped much building at all for 20, 30 years. My first impression as somebody, I had never been to the UMass campus before I started working here. It was Muscle Beach, that you had the library, you had the Fine Arts Center, you had the campus center, you had the Southwest dorms that were all doing that. And the problem is that at least these guys are together and they're creating a community that way. But these muscle-y buildings were surrounded by open fields. So now I'm going to take you to some of the UMass buildings. I think probably a lot of you have been to these buildings, but I'll tell whatever stories I know about them. So this one happens to be one I know a lot about because I'm on the architecture faculty. So this project was first conceived after the 2008 crash, really by a group of faculty. We were challenged by our chancellor at the time to think about ways that UMass could reorganize. And what the chancellor had in mind were efficiencies. So we went to two like-minded departments that were in different colleges and in different buildings. We were all in inferior buildings with leaks and things like that. And we said, wouldn't it be amazing if we could come together in one single building that doesn't leak and is aspirational? And so we began this campaign of what we called the integrated design building, what we called the School of the Built Environment, things like that, which would bring those units at UMass that were similarly interested in architecture and come up with some kind of a home, some kind of a cohesive place where we could exist. We had a huge, if you're thinking about doing this at home, we had huge advantages because we were architects, landscape architects, planners. So we were able to do a building program. We were able to do schematic designs. We were able to do, campus plans to show how this might work. And we tried to get these in front of anyone that might listen. So after a few years of lobbying, being in the right place at the right time, knowing how priorities are set, we found ourselves at the top of the capital plan. And so then there began a big discussion about where said building should go. And cities and campuses have the same issue with sprawl, or the path of least resistance. So UMass does not like to take away parking places or existing buildings because somebody has a relationship to that. So it's always easier to build around the edges. So they showed us some edge sites, like way out by the Marks Meadow Elementary School. And it's like, no, we need to be a school of architecture, or a school of the built environment, which really has this community focus to it. We really need to be in the center of things. And we also need to be near the town because we envision this as being a building where the members of the community can come and have forums, talk about, things like that may be controversial in the town. This could be a neutral space where these things can be discussed. Also, there was a number of art buildings right at the south side of campus, the Fine Arts Center, which I just showed, a newish studio art building. And we said we can be like the arts necklace. So studio art to this new design building, to the Fine Arts Center. There's a plan for a museum in that area also. So why not have all of the arts and design on the south side of campus? So here we are. So we took away half of lot 62. And we got a lot of flack for taking away. People wait years to get into lots. You were on lot 62, were you? Okay. We got a lot of flack for that, and the answer was a parking space takes 300 square feet for somebody that's parking there 8 hours a day. That would be 6 designs, that 300 square feet would be 6 design students times 4 floors, 24 design students in that same parking place, working 24 hours, and the reason that we're here is for those students. So UMass, they ended up building up, anyway, it all worked out. I'll show you, the building's named after our former US Congressman, John Olver, because of the, it's architecture, landscape architecture, regional planning, and building construction technology. The building construction technology, all different colleges at UMass. The building construction people have a real interest in what's called mass timber, which is a modern way of using timber. And one of the faculties from Germany, one of the faculties from Vancouver, that's a place where the mass timber as a sustainable building material is really being researched and developed. So they said, we need to have a mass timber building. So the UMass said, you know, we will price it out. This is actually after the building had been designed and was in early working drawings, which are the drawings that are given to a contractor. They said, we'll delay the project for 4 weeks. We priced it out. It's $3 million up, $2 million upcharge. We'll give you 4 weeks to raise that. And if you don't, we're going to go to the steel building as it's planned. So they had a chance to meet with John Olver, obviously from Amherst, US Congressman, retired, who you know, had a interest in what they were doing because he always had been interested in economic development in Western Mass. And what Western Mass has are, among many things, a lot of trees. So he saw this a way of possibly jump-starting this industry in Western Mass. He also happened to be the mentor of Stan Rosenberg, who at the time was the president of the Massachusetts Senate. So he called up Stan and said, you gotta figure out how these guys can get $2 million. And like 3 weeks after this discussion began, I actually read the newspaper about an environmental bond bill that was making its way through Senate, and they said that Senator Rosenberg has added a $3 million experimental mass timber into the bond bill. And that's how we got a mass timber building. That's how John Olver got his name on the building. So Stan really insisted after the building was built that John should be honored for really being that bridge between a real opportunity and, you know, figuring out a way to get that funded. More mass timber buildings are being constructed at UMass. There's a huge mass timber building being constructed at Amherst College. So we were the first major one. This is the site plan for the building. So there's the Fine Arts Center, there's the Studio Art building. We are one of the pieces of the art necklace so that we can all be in synergy. The longer term plan is that Clark Hall, just to the north of us, that be expanded into possibly a museum. So, yeah. Inside the building, yeah, it's really, if you haven't been there yet, please come. And the door's always open. There's a cafe right there at the entrance. And this is in the artificial world, this is called the Jesus Christ space. And I'm sorry, so the idea is that you walk in and you look up and you go, Jesus Christ. And some of our colleagues from Yale that are on the architecture faculty at Yale have been up, and they have said this is the most beautiful academic space they've been in. And I said, you know what? You guys have the Yale hockey rink. You guys have the British Arts Center. You guys have your own architecture school there, and coming from you, that's a huge compliment. But this is our town common. So this is kind of a town common, indoor town common. Sometimes there's people dancing here, sometimes there's lectures here, sometimes we have critiques here, but it really is.
How's the sound control?
It actually is surprisingly, amazingly good. So we have studios, up here and studios up here. There's a wood shop about where this photo is taken. And that part is amazingly good. The part that's hard in the studio is all hard surfaces, and they get a little noisy. So I just wanted to show you another building. Oh, the architects were Lears Weinzapfel from Boston. They had never done a mass timber building, and I joke if we had put mass timber into the request for proposals, they wouldn't have gotten the project, but they were amazing to work with because they themselves are faculty members, and so their ability to talk to. There's another, and I'm sorry about all of these references to religion, Christian religion, but there's another quip in the architecture world is the church committee. So the church committees are notorious for always having an architect, somebody's brother-in-law or somebody's an architect. And they're the kind of the know-it-all that gets in the, sort of gums the works, like, or my brother's an architect, and even worse. So we were the church committee on steroids because we were a building committee made up of architects. We were super nice, and we were able to talk to the actual architects in a very respectful dialogues. The building came in on time and actually way under budget, so we were very proud of that also. I just want to show you another building designed by the same firm. This is at UConn, and so I hadn't seen this until last year. I walked in, and I know those stairs. Anyway, so, yeah.
Interesting. Can you flip back and show us?
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
I like it off center.
Really
Yeah.
suspended.
Yeah. Ours is wood. They got they were pre-wood.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another project, actually this is worth a view here. That's the design building right there. There's a fine arts center. There's the studio art building. So that's your art necklace, like that. Eventually more pearls or whatever will be put into it. So then I was on the selection committee and then the building committee for the ISOM Business Innovation Hub. So ISOM is the Eisenberg School of Management, the business school. And they had, through a combination of donation and state funds, the ability to build an addition to their building, which is right here. So you can get a little bit of sense of how that has grown over the years. Like there's original building here, addition there. So this would be the next addition. So by the way, our building is a fabric building, so it's really meant to be along North Pleasant, not really stand out, kind of create this four-story wall of buildings along North Pleasant. So we interviewed the architects for the Business Innovation Hub, and 3 of the 4 firms said, we see this as a fabric building. We think that you can repair Hagus Mall there, build out towards this huge undefined mall, where this green space is. Or we think you could build along that mall there, create a better urban edge there. The 4th firm said, we want to be the next Kevin Roche, or actually, we are the next Kevin Roche. And we think this should be part of the Muscle Beach. So this corridor right here is already the beginnings of Muscle Beach, so we want to add one more weightlifter to that. It was a close, well, I can't.
Use that term, I'm sure.
They didn't, they might have actually used that term, yeah. Anyway, they won the project. So this is a firm, Big, Bjarke Ingels Group. It's a founder of this firm is from Denmark and has gotten written up everywhere as being this visionary that has done amazing work with housing and some other things, has an amazing publicity machine. And I'll show you one of his projects in Denmark. Anyway, they got the project. Their idea was to do something that actually was muscular and different. So it's 3/4 of a circle, a donut. And it's really meant to be a platonic shape that is a monumental building. You can read my memoir as to what I think about that. But the building is really nice. Again, it's really worth visiting. So this is their Jesus Christ space where there's like a house of cards that's falling down. And so you can see the pure part of the circle there where the glass is. And then if you can remember from the previous slide, there's like a cascading effect. I'll give them credit that they did these great diagrams for showing how the ISOM building could be expanded. So that's the original set of buildings. Then they argued that it could be expanded where the arrow is. And then extrude a circular shape. And then not just extrude it, but make sure that part of it collapses. So this, a lot of this is their MO. If you look at their books, they're often called BIG, B-I-G. You'll see a lot of these platonic shapes like this. So I did have the good fortune of going to Copenhagen last summer. We went to some big buildings, and some of the housing projects, so they work primarily on these new sites on the edge of Copenhagen, like these newly opened up sites, like where the harbor used to be, things like that, equivalent of the Seaport District in Boston. And I'll give them credit for these just amazing housing projects. Next building that I'm going to talk about, so the old chapel. So the old chapel, if you've been around for a long time, was a unsolved mystery at UMass for many, many years. So I believe that its original intent was, and some of you can help me out here, I believe it originally was intended to be a non-denominational chapel. Never really took off in that way. Then it became the music department, it became some other uses, and then it closed. So when we moved here in 2005, it was completely closed up. And the biggest quandary, one of the biggest quandaries for the building was that accessibility was a big problem. So 4 steps here from the upside, and then the lower level was accessible, but then you couldn't get anywhere because I don't believe there was an elevator at the time. So we were part of a feasibility study to show how that could be renovated, and someone said, well, everyone comes in at the lower level, and then they make their way up to, there's a grand space on the upper level. It's like, something's not right. So eventually the Chancellor Sumaswamy came in. He saw this as, you don't want to board up building right in the middle of your campus, so he reallocated funds, and through fundraising and through a business plan, came up with the funds to finally renovate the old chapel. Through the RFP, request for proposals process, the firm of Feingold Alexander was hired. Feingold Alexander has been known for 30 years as being, back then, 30 years for being pioneers in historic reuse, adaptive reuse, historic preservation, all of the above. Many of you are nodding your heads because they are also the architects for the Jones Library. And they came up with this idea of, why don't you just put a clearly not historic addition onto the south face, have that be the entry, and then you solve this problem of, once you enter at that level, then you have this problem, solve the problem of only go up 1 floor to the main space, only go down 1 floor to what became offices. So this is what that main space looks like now. Just showing you the glass, the site plan for this. And it's used a lot now, so yeah. And in case you were here last week and you've already forgotten about Richardson Romanesque, I'm going to show you another Richard Romanesque building, which is right there.
Actually, it was designed by a Worcester architect, Eldridge Boyden.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
There was a nice publication about Boyden done by the Worcester Historical Society, and when we had our house tour one year, Old Chapel was on it. And I realized that there was no copy of this book in Amherst. So
Yeah, is that
there is
interesting?
now.
Yeah.
Special Collections got a copy.
I just want to show you one other project nearby, not too far away, by Niagara Feingold. Did I say Niagara Feingold or did I say Feingold Alexander?
Said Feingold.
Alexander, okay. It used to be Anderson Nodder, then it was Nodder Feingold, then it was Feingold Alexander. Full disclosure, I worked for Nodder Feingold. I worked in the middle. In more full disclosure, I just saw Feingold, but they did the Holyoke Public Library addition and renovation. And this is really a classic example of this buddy building idea where the old library of Holyoke is off to your right, and then the new addition is towards us. There was, the Holyoke Public Library is in the middle of a park, and so that park is still maintained, so it's still a library in the middle of a park. So one side is a very modern side, the other side is a very historic side. Accessibility, new mechanicals are all provided on the modern side, but the old side is then unable to be maintained. So one more, Bill Gillen, who was here last week, 2 weeks ago, said, what about the space? So I think one of the great things that happened at UMass and actually most of it happened when UMass was shut down during the pandemic. There was started before the pandemic, then a lot of it happened during the pandemic, then reopened fairly recently. But a big part of the master plan for UMass was the reconstruction of what's called Ellis Way. So Ellis Way at one time was a vehicular road, I believe. And then as UMass sort of grew up and it was sort of kind of forgotten about, although there were legacies of it, like little bits and pieces of sidewalks, little rows of trees. And so the master plan that was developed in around 2010 or so really saw Ellis Way, the redevelopment of Ellis Way, as being kind of critical for the legibility of UMass. So I'm going to just show you some snapshots of that, but then also some of the buildings that have been put around that. So this is this big sweeping yellow brick road that connects a lot of the central campus. So it's much easier now to give directions, which actually is a sign that your legibility is pretty good. And I love how it shish kebab skewers through some of the modern, like the campus center, the Marcel Breuer designed campus center, some of the legacy buildings such as Gessam, but then also the West Experiment Station is right there. I thought I had a slide of the West Experiment Station, so anyway, so it's almost like a little architectural tour in itself. So you go from some of the original buildings to some of the, it's like a time travel. And then one end of it is the Worcester Dining Common, which is more or less designed to be sort of a fabric building. This is where your office.
East Experiment is where we were.
Yeah, right here, right. Yeah. East Experiment Station right here. So this is Worcester Dining right out pretty close to North Pleasant, right next to the Integrated Science Building. So all of these, except for, I wasn't here for this one, but all of these others have, well, the Morrill Science Center, that was new too. But along the story of UMass in some ways is the story of North Pleasant, because it's really filled in with buildings built pretty close to the street, not that close to the street. And it's gone from being, I used to joke when I got here that North Pleasant, the abbreviation was no pleasant, meaning not pleasant. But now I would say it's actually just pleasant. So it's actually a really kind of a nice walk. And then I just wanted to touch on one other brand new building. I don't think that date's right. I think I carried, the date is really 2023. I think it just opened.
Yeah.
So this was, everyone, this is on, that is
University.
Mass.
Or no, Mass
Mass Ave. Thank you. I've worked for 20 years and I don't know. It's Mass Ave. So it's right on Mass Ave. UMass's first experiment with a public-private partnership. So this is a private residence hall, privately operated, although still overseen by campus life, built on university property. And it's kind of fun to see if you, assuming that you know the campus, that these are Southwest dorms, which are these big, tall, these are Muscle Beach buildings. This is very much a fabric building. And it's very much of the language and of the spirit of the times of some of these buildings in the town of Amherst that have been built on the north side of town that we talked about last time, Kendrick Place, 1 East Pleasant. So it's a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-story building, very close to the sidewalk. Of course, it's all on university properties. It creates actually a really beautiful street edge as you walk along it. There's a cafe there, there's a gym there. You know, it actually is a very, very nice walk. It has beautiful courtyards. But one thing I really like about it, there are a number of things I like about it. One is it's unabashedly a fabric building. 2 is it's unabashedly an urban building, so it's creating an urban edge to Mass Ave. But the other thing is that it has these design moves that you can read this also as a 3-story building, so there's 1 floor there. And then these 2 are bunched, and those 2 are bunched, so you can sort of look at it as a 3-story building. It steps back as it goes back towards the non-UMass properties that are to the south of campus. So these are some more views of that.
Oh,
And then this is back off of Lincoln as you walk back. So then the scale of this changes to, much smaller. And so then I'm just going to end with a slide from last time. This is not UMass, but I just wanted to toggle back and forth between those. And so I think that you can also look at what's happening at the north end of downtown as being kind of this bridge to what's happening at UMass. So we go from the historic core of downtown Amherst to the more modern edges of the town of Amherst, and then into the modern campus of UMass Amherst. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Yeah.
So I'm really interested in the variety of materials in the most recent addition to the Fieldstone apartments.
Yeah.
Is that common? I mean, there's so many different types of materials, colors.
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
it
I
looks
think it
great,
works.
I like it, but is that?
And a lot of grays, right? So my last impression of that is sort of earth tones, like grays and browns.
Yeah.
And then it gets a little bit more red as it moves back into the neighborhoods. No, it's not all that common. Like, I think that some of the new buildings at UMass, like that, it didn't show the integrated. Every building at UMass starts off as integrated sciences.
Right.
And our building was originally the integrated design building. And then we just, too much, the budget cut, we couldn't afford all those letters. So there's a building that's right next to the campus center that has, I've lost track of all the colors.
Yeah, I see. Integrated Learning Center.
Integrated Learning Center, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. But I think the Fieldstone apartments actually do a really good job of using color, but not too much color, and then the colors that they do use are earth tones. None of this is scientific, by the way. Yeah.
I like those, I like that building too, but it does have really wide sidewalks.
Yeah.
Which the buildings in town
Yeah.
didn't do.
No, yeah,
So
I-
wide sidewalks and then trees between this.
And that's what happens when you own all the land, right? So,
But that feels
You
really
own the
nice
street, you
walking
own the
there,
sidewalks,
where
you
it
own-
doesn't feel as nice walking by this building.
oh, I'm with you. And I was, I made sure that I walked by there in preparation for this, and in preparation for that question. So, because I agree with you. So that's a quandary with our zoning bylaw, it's a quandary with our values. And, so there obviously people will say, well, the property owner has a right to build to the property line, and then it's the town's responsibility to provide right of way. There's another one that said, no, it's the property owner's obligation to provide a proper right of way. If you go into Manhattan, places like that, you'll often see this little brass marker that says you're on private property. It's the same sidewalk, but you're on private property, and for whatever that means. And then just more trivia while we're at it, like there are places where the city sidewalk, town sidewalk, is entirely on private property, such as in front of, trying to think of what the current tenant is, Primo Pizza. That sidewalk is actually all on private property. This is being videotaped, okay, so someone's gonna challenge me.
So the sidewalk on Triangle Street is actually.
The one on the
that
the
side?
north side is all on
It's
private
all on
property,
private
yeah. Mostly private property, yeah, there's,
Yeah.
Steve, did you say the Fieldstone is the first time that UMass has done a public-private
Yes.
partnership like that?
Yep, and there are two at the same time. So the one that's off of Lincoln, and then the other one is a graduate student housing that is
North Village replacement,
University
Village
Village.
replacement.
university.
Yeah.
Is
Am
that
I
what
right
used to
that
be
they
North
don't
Village?
pay
It used to be
property
North
taxes?
Village, but the university started that
I am using my phone a friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't pay.
University
property
started that as private,
Yeah.
public, but somehow it ended up coming back to the university because I think it's a very unfavorable try to rent to graduate students.
taxes. Yeah,
And all of a sudden, the university had it back.
Ah.
They did all kinds of messing
Yeah,
around
yeah.
with money and,
yeah. And Massachusetts is late to the game in public-private partnerships. A lot of campuses have been doing this, and a lot of municipalities have been doing this for.
The new Newman Center at UMass is the same thing. That's
The
built
new,
on, that's built on public, there's a 99-year lease, but it was built by the Springfield Diocese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there has to be something like that, unless UMass gave the land. I don't know, actually, I should have shown that one, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next time. I'll come back in 2 weeks.
I think another new Mass Wood building is a new computer science building.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Up on
I don't know
campus.
what the name of that building is, but.
New computers.
New computer science. It's like
It's
it's
around the north end.
integrated computer science building. No.
When I drove past it a few days ago, I
it's-
noticed it looked like that.
It's the CSL, so computer science
Science
laboratories or something.
Yeah.
Yep, another Mass Timber building.
Yep.
Was the Jones Library going to be, the addition going to be Mass Timber and now it's not? Or is that-
I believe that's correct. I'm not on the, I'm using my phone a friend here. It was originally designed, in fact, the architects, Michael Alexander, came and studied our building, talked to the fabricators, and I believe that in the new bid package that it's not.
So that was
Currently, we're looking at Legos.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, seeing the Holyoke Library makes some of this really sad and green, but then they, and
Yeah,
that's a big city.
and yeah, no kidding. Yeah, but
The
so,
other face of the Holyoke Library though is absolutely historic.
yeah,
And
Yep.
that, so what, it really, they changed the orientation of the entrance to
Yeah.
the new.
Yep.
But they
And
also
they,
had
part
more
of the
space.
redevelopment of that whole block, that
Yeah.
whole block was a mess.
It's
So
really worth a
it's
visit.
an urban renewal
Yeah.
sort of thing.
And they didn't have such a big church committee.
Have you seen the South Hadley Library,
I have
which overlooks the water?
Oh, it's beautiful.
Core big and tears to my eyes, yeah,
It's a nice,
yeah,
it's a
yeah.
nice job there.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
And ground up, that was a ground up project, so meaning
Right.
that it was
Right.
a new project on
And,
it. Ground up projects are always easier than, and by the way, I didn't show the physical science building at UMass, which is also a new building. Buddy building to West Experiment Station.
Mm.
Too expensive to renovate West Experiment Station in place, and it was in the wrong place, so they actually dismantled it,
Brick by brick.
brick by brick, moved it not that far, and
I
then
know.
rebuilt it, yeah.
So I don't understand the advantage of the Mass Wood. It's not the beautiful wood inside, right? It's the structure.
The advantage, and I joke that, so the major ways that you build, the ways that you build major buildings in the United States are concrete, frame, we're really talking about the frame, steel, now wood. I'm missing something.
Glass walls.
Well, glass walls are the curtain walls, they don't, I think those are the
Steel and concrete mostly.
steel, concrete, and now wood. So each of those industries say that they're the most sustainable. Concrete will last forever, like the Pantheon, right? The Pantheon's still around, concrete. Steel say that they'll last forever, melt it down, use it again. Mass timber says we're the most sustainable because you can grow it. So what it has is, wood has a lot of embodied carbon. So if you can basically encapsulate that carbon, so your carbon's not going into the, I'm putting this very bluntly, if the carbon is sequestered inside the wood, so it's not, the wood's not dying, right, releasing carbon or burnt, then that's very sustainable. There's manufacturing it is much more gentle than the other two. And then you can grow it, right? You cut down a tree, you can grow another tree. So, where was I going with that? So mass timber, a lot of very tall mass timber
That makes
buildings
sense. I
are,
just never knew it.
yeah,
Concrete is horrendously carbon intensive.
Except there
Yep.
are new
Is it new?
technologies making it less so.
Yeah,
When-
there are-
When
yeah.
those take off,
Well,
Yeah.
there's one, isn't there somewhere in Holyoke or somewhere in this area, there's
That's
lot of
one
hemp-
of those
a lot of hempcrete.
more specific.
Bring it back, yeah.
So when you talked about the campus, you talked about individual buildings. Would you, if you look back 50 years, would you say there's a coherent plan for developing the campus? Or is it always sort of episodic, we've got a donor, we have a need, where do we put it? How would you say campus planning integrates with the architectural initiatives?
Yeah, great question, because I think that if we go back to wayfinding, if you go to, say, Amherst College and ask for directions, they're gonna give you directions by space, right? So they'll give you the quad, the meadow, or this, the fields. If you ask for directions at UMass, they're still gonna get directions by the mass timber building. The pond, right? And there's some irony that our one memorable space, well, one of our memorable spaces is a pond. So I think the intent is to make it more identifiable by space, so to really fill in, to make a urban fabric, so that you have quads, things like that. There is a master plan, they try to follow the master plan. It's hard, and I'm not I'm on the academic side at UMass, I'm not on the build the building side of UMass, but I am on the watchdog side. And it's hard that they get a new building gets funded by the state or by a donor, and they try to follow the master plan, and there's a pipe in the middle, or there's a drainage problem or an accessibility problem, and they move it over 6 feet, and there goes the quad. And the other thing is that, any architects in the room? Architects want to, yeah. But the Fieldstone Apartments is great, but no one's going to identify that by the architect. But I do say, go to the Kevin Roach building, take a left, so each architect, they want to leave their signature. So that is and also donors don't want to fund necessarily the quad or the LS Way. So I think that UMass's intent is to make it much more about space, by outdoor space.
They have filled in a lot of parking lot.
They have filled
I
a
mean,
lot of park, yeah.
I worked there and I was at
Yeah.
an exercise when they were doing a campus planning exercise, and
Yeah.
the planners were in, and it was right around when we were gonna build new residence halls, and at the end of their presentation, they said, we wanna talk to you about where you're gonna put your new residence halls, which were gonna be up adjacent to Orchard Hill. And they said, why aren't you putting them here? And they pointed to the tennis courts and the parking lots by Boyden Gym, which is now the Honors College.
And one of my jobs, so I was
Yeah.
the chair of the campus planning
Yeah.
committee at that time, and was on the edge of that discussion.
Yeah,
Brilliant, 300 square feet of car
yeah,
used 8 hours a day
yeah,
choose a number of students
yeah.
over 4 or 5 stories. In Commonwealth Honors College is like 7 stories tall. So my job was to go with the staff architects
Yeah,
to all these meetings that our friends were yelling at us, and my job was to talk to them, as a faculty member, and why
Right.
this was of value to all of us.
it blocks some nice views that people in Tobin and other
Views,
places have.
parking.
Yeah, the
Our
parking, yeah,
colleagues are really clever
yeah, yeah.
about, I don't know, so architects think all day long about parking lots as building sites. I'm not sure, we might be unique that
Right.
way, yeah.
But they I think the architect did a nice job there. Those buildings are all different.
They're all different, they're
stones.
very,
Yeah,
they're really fabric buildings.
Yeah.
Bill Ron?
Yeah.
So Bill Ron was the architect?
yeah.
Bill, damn.
He
next
was
time.
involved with the Kidder House too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ladies and gentlemen, this man.
yeah.
So Bill Ron is a very prominent architecture firm in Boston.
Mm,
Bill Ron himself was a lawyer for the UMass system,
yeah,
for the UMass system. and he was a printmaker, and so someone told him in mid-career, you should be an architect. So he went to MIT, got an architecture degree. His very first project, through a lawyer connection, was the owner still lives here, so was
Right.
the house that was the focus, you all know this, the focus of the book, Tracy Kidder.
Oh,
Yeah.
So that book, by the way, came out in the year that I graduated from architecture school. I still think it's the best book ever written about
Yeah.
the design and
Yeah,
architecture, the design and building process. Bill Ron's next project in Amherst, anyone?
there's something over there.
Was like a 300-bed
Yeah.
dormitory at Amherst College. It's
Yeah.
the stone one near the tennis courts.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, but that was
Yeah.
finished in maybe 2008.
Yeah.
His next project in Amherst was how many thousand bed Commonwealth Honors College. So I say, it's like the powers of 10.
Yeah.
It goes from
Right.
a 3-bedroom house to a 300-bedroom house to a
What's
3,000.
next?
Yeah.
And he's still around. He's his firm was one of the 4 finalists for the School of Management
Yeah.
project, and they had proposed this beautiful fabric building.
Yeah.
Yeah, what could have been?
So what is your impression of what would be perceived as the center of the university campus, which is campus center, the library, the student center? Those are like 3 very different types of buildings, right?
I think that it used to be a mess. So I think that it's not a mess anymore. So I think it's actually one of the more memorable centers. It's a little annoying that you can't occupy, like we don't have a Harvard Yard or something like that. But I think it's very memorable, and I think it's, is that kind of where it is? Yeah.
Yeah, I
they
think
don't
it's
want to-
interesting that they concentrate all their activities in one. I was saying, what is the center of campus? If you ask
Yeah,
those
right.
people, everybody would probably readily identify that as the center of
It has,
campus.
yeah,
Like,
it has
where
to be, because it's where some of the legacy buildings are. It's the most memorable space on campus.
the tallest.
The tallest.
And the Ellis Way just beautifully
Yeah.
Yeah.
speaks
does.
through that. I mean, I think that's genius.
And
So,
you were right about, I think around the COVID's place in that I think one of the hardest things is to get, students to follow new paths.
yeah,
But they were away for a year, come back, and those paths are there, and people just, there's no cross over the grass or anything, they did a great job.
By the way-
Lots and lots of little sidewalks,
Yeah.
so you don't
Yeah,
have to.
there were a
Right.
lot of,
I used to work at my very first full-time teaching job was at the University of Miami, Coral Gables, Florida. And that also has a pond at the very center, and it's called the Alligator Pond because there's alligators in there. But you can rent canoes, so you can actually the pond is a resource. And I used to take my architecture students canoeing, and that we would draw buildings. And then you can actually canoe from that, equivalent of Tan Brook.
Into town?
We can actually canoe that into some historic neighborhoods. So, but that's the only other place I can think of right off the top of my head that has a pond right in the middle, and it took the entire center of the University of Miami.
They
So
used to
there's
have 2 beautiful swans.
Yeah. I think there is a plan to dredge that
Yeah.
pond. I would love to see more active use, like
Yeah.
literally canoeing or skating or whatever.
when we had winter, people skated on it all the time.
Yeah, you see tracks on it when we
That's
have
why we
winter.
don't need sidewalks downtown,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Steve, didn't Olmsted come up with a plan for the campus
Yeah.
way back when, and
Yeah.
also for Berkeley, and
Yep.
neither of those got built?
Yeah.
Are there elements of that still in the?
Yeah, I should have, because I wanted to really focus on the more modern.
Sure.
Olmsted did do a plan, and which Olmsted I'm not sure, because the Olmsted enterprise became a big enterprise. And was it Central Park Olmsted, or was it his sons, or was it their associates? I don't know, but there's an Olmsted association with the town common, there's an Olmsted association with UMass, there's an Olmsted association with Wildwood Cemetery, and I don't know if it was a sketch on the back of a napkin, but it's like the Beatles slept here, right? Did they actually sleep there? Yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you so much.